Our volunteer potatoes are providing us with an early opportunity to continue our experiments where we try to grow our potatoes from potato suckers.
Guten Yardening, everybody. It's been a great start to the spring, and we just got an unexpected opportunity brought to us by some unexpected volunteer potatoes. In our main potato bed from last year, we had a whole bunch of volunteer potatoes spring up. We transplanted some of them, and we've been keeping an eye on the ones that we've left in the ground. And as they have continued to grow, we noticed the development, of course, of some of the suckers. And what that means is a continuation of the experiments that we have been doing in the winter. Over the winter, one of our successes was growing potatoes. We grew potatoes indoors for the first time ever. And while we were growing those potatoes indoors, we had a theory that because potatoes are in the same family as tomatoes, in the nightshade family, and that we could harvest suckers from tomatoes and grow tomatoes and tomato plants, that we could potentially clone our potatoes as well by harvesting some of those suckers and attempting to grow some of our own potatoes and maybe even grow them faster. And some of the results that we saw from our early experimentation showed us that maybe this idea actually merits more research and more experimentation. So the first couple versions of these experiments went pretty well, and we continued to modify what we thought was the best method to get these suckers to grow. And we got some roots in the first couple of experiments. We got some small potatoes in the first couple of experiments. And then our last experiment, where we went directly into water with some liquid fertilizer, did not work well at all. Perhaps in part due to the fact that the stem itself shouldn't have come into contact directly with the fertilizer. But now, as we head outdoors, we have some ideas as to how we can improve this experiment. Here's our first sucker, and you'll notice that it's down pretty close to the base of the potato. And what I think is probably true is the closer we can get down to that root structure, the better chance we have of this performing the way we want it to. Now, I'm going to cut it as cleanly as possible. Anytime we're doing cuttings, you want to have a sharp knife or sharp cutters, something to give you a clean cut, so we're doing as little damage to the cells as possible. I have a theory that the closer to the root system we are, maybe the better this will be. And this is our second sucker here, and basically the same thing we're looking for. Again, a nice thick structure to the stem so that we give it the best chance of survival. I think if we picked one of the smaller suckers, there's less likelihood that we're going to see any kind of good result. And these volunteer potatoes are providing lots of great suckers. This phase of our experiment has a few substantial changes, one of which is the growing mediums that we're going to try out this time around. Now, we have used water in the past, and we're going to use that as our control. This time around, we're also going to be using a perlite water mix to see what that does. And then we have a soilless potting mix here that we're going to use, and we're going to plant directly in this soilless mix. Now, we haven't done that in the past. In the past, most of it has been somehow water-based. Now, the other thing we're going to do is we're going to be using a rooting powder this time. And this is, I think, probably one of the biggest differences, because this rooting powder should, in theory, help these suckers to really take hold faster and perhaps not die. Now, one of the things that I want to note about this is that I've taken some of this rooting powder and I've poured it into a separate container. You don't want to stick any cuttings into the container that has the rooting powder, because then you'll contaminate that powder. So we have a little bit in here that we're going to put our stems into. Now, I'm going to do this as quickly as possible. They've been cut off for the last couple of minutes, and they're already starting to wilt a little bit. So I want to get them back into where we're going to have them into their mediums. Okay, so I've cut off any low-hanging leaves. So what I've done, I've got a clean cut at the bottom. I've got this powder in here, and I'm going to get it about an inch up on the stem. I'm just going to keep spreading it until I get it around an inch all the way around, just like so. So now we've got the rooting hormone about an inch up, and then I'm going to go ahead and get this planted. One other thing I should mention, I'm going to get it started here in this soilless potting mix first. I'm going to go down nice and deep as I can, and then cover it up, and then I'm going to get this watered. One of the things I should mention is with that rooting hormone, you also don't want to have any skin contact, and you don't want to breathe that powder in as best you can. Let me go ahead and get this watered, and then we'll put the other two together. Now, the other thing that is going to be different about this than what we did in the winter time is, well, we're growing this outdoors. So
I don't know if growing it outdoors is going to make a huge difference, but it couldn't hurt having that natural sunlight. So I've got this nicely watered, and now we're going to put the other suckers into their growing setups. All right, we got our second one covered in about an inch of this powder, and we're going to gently push it down into this perlite water mix. And you can see we've got several inches of perlite. There's some water down at the bottom, but this will keep soaking up. It absorbs about 3 to 4 times its weight in water, so this should consistently stay watered. So we'll see what a difference this makes. I don't know, what are your thoughts? Which one will perform better? All right, here's our third and our final sucker, and this is going just directly into plain water. We've had some success with just water in the past. I don't know what the rooting hormone is going to do. In fact, as I've been reading about the rooting hormone, there have been some different suggestions as to whether or not it should be used in water, if it would be effective in water, or what that might cause. So I really don't have any idea how this third one is going to turn out whatsoever. So I really don't have any idea how the water is going to impact these two. So there we have our 3 new setups for this experiment with trying to grow potatoes from suckers. Now these look a little wilted, but I'm going to check back in the morning and I'll show you how they look then. One of the reasons why they look this way is because they've been cut off. It's a lot of trauma for these plant pieces, and they're having to adapt to their new growing medium. Well, which one of these do you think will perform the best out of these 3? We'd love to get your feedback and your thoughts on this experiment and what we can do to improve our chances when growing potatoes from suckers. All right, it's the next morning as I promised, and here we have the 2 that we put into our water-based containers. You can see they've perked right back up, and the one in the soil is still a little bit bent over, but I kind of imagine it has a little bit more work to do as it adjusts, but hopefully in the long run it actually does better. But we'll see. I'm not sure. And this is day 2. We have really strong looking suckers still from both of these, and we're still a little bit bent over here, but lots of green, and so I've still got a lot of hope for this direct in the soilless mix planting. All right, this is our day 3 check-in, and one of the things that I should have mentioned early on that I didn't is that I'm keeping the one that's in the soilless potting mix thoroughly watered. I want to make sure that we give it, as much water in here as we can without over-watering, since the ones who are in the direct water are doing so well. And then the second thing is I decided to stake this one up just to give it a little support, again, to remove any stress that we can to help it out. So now we have our 3 days in. Again, everything's still alive. This one's still the most wilted, but I still see some potential. So there we go. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give us a like, leave us a comment, remember to share and subscribe. And most importantly, remember, when you're with us, you are good to grow.